these moments of crisis, they can bring us together in the most magnificent ways. There were huge fires in the Palisades and there were huge fires in the Malibu. So by the time that the fires started coming up the canyon, there were no resources left. But the people that lived there, who were connected to place, who were connected to each other, who were connected to land, showed up for each other.
The Sounds True Podcast Network. While you were recording this series for Sounds True on sacred storytelling, if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you were in a studio in the New York area recording this teaching series while the fires were spreading in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area, including to the area of your home in Topanga Canyon, and that the fires actually burned down many houses in your community and came dangerously close, very close, within a couple of blocks to your home. And as you're talking about this storytelling for hope and possibility, and the fires are spreading in your hometown. Tell me what that was like for you and how you oriented towards telling the story of fire devastation.
It was such a powerful confluence, Tammy, to be, in those studios recording for you guys, really talking about the role of the sacred storyteller in these times, the role of storyteller as guide, as someone who provides a pathway through. And then all of a sudden, on the morning of the third recording day, I was in the subway and I got news that the fire was at the bottom of our street, and it was real. I realized I had to turn off my phone. I had to focus on the day of recording, and I went in fully with the reality of, okay, everything of my material world could be about to be lost. And what happened in that moment was that there were huge fires in LA. The Palisades, the way that Topanga works is we're surrounded by Malibu on one side of us as a canyon and the Palisades on the other side. And there were huge fires in the Palisades and there were huge fires in the Malibu. So by the time that the fires started coming up the canyon, there were no resources left. There were no fire trucks left. And so my entire community of people is calling 911, and we're getting these messages. Topanga is a very well-networked community. It's a special spot where people go there and they want to be in community, and they're pretty well networked. And so I'm looking at over the WhatsApp groups and the hysteria and the fear that's happening, that people are calling 911 and they're being told that no one's going to come. And what Topanga had, which I actually think every community has, is that they were very well resourced. And one of the first resources they had was connection. So for example, on my block, we had brunches together. So we were already connected. Everyone on the block was already in a text thread. We also had people who were used to doing things in the world and who automatically turned their skills inward to start taking action. So within hours, like literally within hours, they had created entire WhatsApp groups, understanding who needed help getting evacuated. They had understood, it made a map of all the pools in the entire canyon so that when the fire trucks came, they would understand how to access water. They had understood, people started bringing in their own fire trucks, which I didn't know this was something that you could do. But then there's this that happened. When in this kind of crisis, and I don't know if you've ever had a health crisis or something, when I've experienced it myself, all of the noise of life goes away. And if you can be in that place of deep listening and life that wants to keep going, it gets very clear what is yours to do. And that's what I witnessed in that community. All of a sudden, all these different people came online and people got in their lane for what they were really good at. The marketing people started creating these communication systems. The tough, rugged dudes created their own fire brigade. So all of a sudden, within hours, Topanga had their own homemade fire brigade that was then going out and putting out spot fires, and they had these communication systems. The people who were emergency trainers knew that the libraries, and everyone should know this, by the way, that your local library is set up as an emergency center and has communication systems that don't shut down when everything else does. They have generators, they have all of that. We had someone in our community that knew that, so we had within hours an emergency system. And then there's this. Everyone that was to get out of the way did. And that's a really important piece. That's where that deep listening, we're not all supposed to be on the front line. There's waves of things that can be done at different times from different places. And that fire came where I live in Topanga, was literally right on the edge of the wilderness, really across the street, wilderness. And when the fires came, my neighbors, who had all lived there for over 30 years, finally, when Barb left, I knew it was serious because Barb never left. But she understood how when the fire goes down to the ocean, the winds bring it back up and then it's time to go. And then there were two neighbors in our area. This is such an important story. There were two neighbors on our block that had it out for each other. And I lived on the friendliest block in the world, best neighbors, but we had some people that moved in that didn't know about living in rural areas, and they didn't understand the nature of neighbors. And they stayed with the old timers that also stayed. And together they ended up fighting that fire together. And it's such an important piece in terms of what is real community. Real community shows up for each other when it's not convenient and when you need each other. That's what community is. They're the people that, they don't have to be your best friends. They're the people who you really need when the moment comes. And all of the nonsense of our egos and personalities doesn't need to be forefront when the crisis comes. And so those two people who fought like cats and dogs in normal life fought the fire together and saved Topanga. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that, because they ended up calling in the fire brigade. And when the airplanes came in, they didn't understand why they had to save that particular mountainside. And they realized that if the fire came there, it would have taken the whole canyon. It's, to me, one of the most inspiring stories, and it's the story that gives me hope that everything can fall apart. The social services were not there for us when we needed them in that moment, but the people that lived there, who were connected to place, who were connected to each other, who were connected to land, showed up for each other. And it was one of the most extraordinary times. And these moments of crisis, they can bring us together in the most magnificent ways. And they've done research on World War II and the long-term impact, and they went back to the people of London and asked them, what was the best time of their lives. And they actually talk about the time that they were getting bombed as being one of the highlight times of their life, because there was so much connection, there was so much community, there was so much aliveness. And not that I say that, I'm not calling for that kind of crisis, but I do want us to know, as people who remember our past and who remember our history, and remember that crisis it will bring out our best and it will bring out our worst. And I really, having been through now several crises, I was in the fires in Northern California, I was near the fires in Southern California, I've been around the fires of Maui, that over and over and over again, most people truly want to be their best selves. And this gives us this opportunity to show up in a way that we might not get to when we're, in the doldrums of everyday life.
Now, I want to just make something more explicit, if you will, because there's so many different ways to tell any story. You just chose a way to tell the story of the Topanga fire and how these two neighbors collaborated, even though in ordinary life they, hated each other. When it came down to it, they were on the same team and they did this heroic act together. You could have told the story a different way about the Topanga fire. How does a sacred storyteller use a lens, if you will, to, in your words, tell stories that bring us home? How do we focus on, oh, I'm going to tell the story in such a way that brings us home? Are you excluding a lot of other possible stories in the process, or what's the lens you use to do that?